Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 147 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Ville Valo, I want to let you know that there are now Mistress Carrie guitar picks available in the shop at mistresscarrie.com. Whether you're a guitar player or you just like to collect guitar picks, you can get a 10-pack in the shop. Just go to mistresscarrie.com. You'll also find the 7-in-1 bartender tool, the concert-approved clear plastic waste bag. You'll find t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, beanies, coffee mugs, pint glasses, and so much more. Just head to mistresscarrie.com. Ville Valo is a goth-rock pioneer, formerly the lead singer of the band H.I.M. Well, he's branched out with his debut album, Neon Noir, from his new solo project, Vivi. The album was released on January 13th, and he's now out on the road, including a stop in Boston at Big Night Live coming up on April 2nd. Ville had taken a few days off and was at home, so we sat down to talk about his musical influences, his love of touring, his songwriting process, his home country of Finland, why he despises his birthday so much, and his idea of the perfect song. We also talked about gardening, the beauty of people's imperfections, and so much more. It was great getting to know Ville, and I can't wait to meet him at Big Night Live in Boston coming up April 2nd. So allow me to introduce you to Ville Valo from Vivi. Ville!
What's going on?
It's nice to finally meet you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy, a tad exhausted, to be honest with you. We just finished the European leg of the first tour, and of course I got myself a bit of a flu at the end of it, you know. Like us rock and rollers do. Yeah. You cannot be ill when on tour. So always when you fly back, that's when you, like school teachers, you know, it's like end of the semester, and that's always when you're under the weather. So I'm not complaining whatsoever. But these are only the few days to recharge my batteries and get ready for the to fly over to Philadelphia. So well, start the first tour.
The first thing I usually ask people, because bands travel so much, is do they know where they are and where are they? And my assumption is that you're home.
Yeah, I'm at home at this very moment in time. You know, I'm just hanging. This is I've got my parents who still live in Helsinki, Finland as well, only a few miles down from my place, and I like to keep close to the family. So
yeah, I still live where I grew up too. It's nice.
Yeah, I'd like, actually, to be honest with you, this is not the area in the city where I grew up, so I'd like to be even closer, you know, because it's fairly rare when you actually know all the little tiny, you've seen the trees grow, you know, like, you know, where the roots are, you know, when you know, I love, you know, biking, so, you know, the little tiny detours and your own little, you know, roots here and there, and yeah, it's quite special. A lot of people don't have it, so that's sort of like sense of belonging. Or a lot of people haven't had the chance to grow up in the same place, so they've been moving around or so forth. So that might be different and cool in a different way. But I'm a romantic sucker, so I always and I'm big on nostalgia. So that's what I dig.
I think you and I have that in common, and it's when you say the word home, I think it means different things to different people. And I think you and I living where we grew up, that there is that sense of family history, and that literally on every street corner there's a memory of something from your childhood, and there's something comforting with that.
A sense of ease and a sense of belonging. So yeah, it is special. Home is special. It's always been special, and especially being in a touring rock band. You know, when you get to travel a lot, but you end up being long periods away from your home. You get the different vantage point and start to appreciate it even more. You know, the absence makes the heart grow fonder, as they say.
Well, April 2nd, you can call Boston home for a day, and we will welcome you with open arms.
Thank you so much in advance. We've always had a blast, you know, with my previous, you know, ensemble, H.I.M. You know, we had a blast whenever in Boston. So, but usually a lot of times on tours, there's no time to really get to see anything. So basically, you're at the mercy of the local promoter. If there's a runner or a cool local person that takes you out for a wee bit or tells you stories about the city, and a lot of times you get to know cities by the persons. So not so much about the, you know, let's say the architecture or the places to go to, the touristy things, but more through the stories of local people, which is quite cool. It's like you get to see you get to see a site that a lot of people never do.
Well, I haven't met you before, and you're not going to be in town long enough, but I will make the offer that the next time you're in town, if you can schedule a day off, I will give you the Mistress Carrie tour of Boston. My brain is filled with useless information about my hometown that I am more than willing to share with you.
Thank you so very much. Yeah, we all need to have our brains defragmented on an occasion. So I know that feeling. And useless information can be quite useful at times as well. So.
Well, I think when someone that cares about the place that calls that place home.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling, and I say it all the time on the show that rock bands are some of the most well-traveled people on the planet because you are always someplace else. But getting a tour from someone that grew up where you are, you learn all the places that the tourists never learn, the good places that make a place special.
Indeed. Yeah, it's very true. And then again, being a recording artist as well, there's so many cool places to record in. Like we've recorded in the countryside of Wales in a place called Rockfield Studios where the Queen did Bohemian Rhapsody, at least some of it, and a place with a lot of history and creative history. And then those places, a lot of times, they're in the middle of nowhere. There's just a little village somewhere, you know, maybe with a pub, and that's about it. And we tracked an album in Silver Lake. We rented a mansion there in the early 90s. And there's a lot of cool experiences through that because then you also get to see a place from a very different perspective than being just a tourist or even a touring band. So yeah, I still do love traveling, you know, and it's after the pandemic and all that, you know, it's nice to be able to finally be free for a wee bit. We were all chained to our own little cages for quite some time. So
you never realized how much you wanted to travel and more importantly for us and the rock community at large, how much we desperately missed going to live shows.
And how desperately us musicians missed shaking our butts on stage, you know. So, I was never, early on, I was never a huge fan of touring. I always felt that it's very tiring. And that was when I was a bit younger. And I've learned to appreciate touring. And I was and I still can be a very nervous person before gigs, and I always get the butterflies, and you know it's but I've learned how to deal with all that and enjoy the moment.
Even knowing that the room is filled with people that are there to see you, that love you, you still get nervous.
You sure? I think you have to. I think it's a completely it's a necessary thing to go through. I think if you're not feeling anything, that means you don't care. And usually, if you don't feel anything, it means also that either you're sick or then the gig will just be terrible. It's I always get nervous. I know a few artists that there's one guy he passed away recently, but he still kept on touring until the very end of his life, 70 something, and he always puked before each and every gig. And he was a very, very pro, but he always got to his nerves, the performing, and he performed thousands of times. So it's I think it's about caring. You really care for it, and it matters to you, and then you want to be good, and there's no routine when it comes to that. That's the magic of music in general.
You talk about recording studios with a history. There are a lot of very historical venues around the world. What do you think it is about a place that kind of gives it that energy and that vibe, that it has a memory of what's come before? What do you think that is? Something soaked into the wood?
Well, when I was younger, I thought it's the architecture, but these days I do know it's the people. It's just in some places people find it comfortable to witness music. And because they congregate in those places, that means that all the bands play there too, which means that there's a lot of energy going back and forth between the audience and the artists. And then exactly what you said, it could be that some of the remnants of that energy gets soaked into the architecture somehow. I'm not quite sure, thinking of, there's a lot of legendary poop holes, so to speak, places that are not fancy at all, and they don't even feel that special before the audience gets in. So it is a matter of I think, always the audience.
Well, you talk about the recording studios too, and there's no audience there, but bands go to those historic studios because there is something maybe left behind from the artists that have come before.
Well, all of them. Then again, we could speculate that it's that the artists before went there because they're great studios. They sound great. You can get great recordings. The better a room sounds, the better you perform, and the better your song sounds. And then hopefully it will translate better to the audience. And then it's another story when you're on tour, when you're sort of reliving the emotion of the song each and every night. That's a different cup of tea, I consider. Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, you book a studio because of its legacy. Same with hotels at times. There's a Chateau Marmont for a reason. So, and you pay the extra to get there if that's your thing. But yeah, we're funny creatures, aren't we?
It is interesting, and you and I are both sitting in studios of our own design, which also kind of gives you this different level of comfort because everything is the way that you want it. So rather than working in a studio someone else designed that's decorated away, for me, radio studios, for you, recording studios, to be in your own environment, surrounded by your own kind of quirky things, can be comforting too.
Well, yeah, it is indeed. And the sort of like makeshift nature of it all, I think, brings the little kid out. And I think that's important when working in the realm of creative arts, because you so easily one starts to think about the stuff that doesn't really matter. Is it the left hemisphere takes over and you start thinking about bills and timings and schedules and what makes sense, what doesn't. And at the end of the day, we all know that in the land of the creative sort of work, it doesn't have to make any sense. It shouldn't make any sense a lot of times. It should be just free flowing thing, and the professional in you should be professional enough to catch those right moments in time. And that's about it. To be able to document when the proper stuff goes on.
I've never been fortunate enough to travel to Finland, but there's so much great music that has come out of there over the years. What do you think it is about your home country that inspires so much, especially rock and metal?
Well, it's the whole of Scandinavia is pretty similar vibe-wise. Well, Finland is not officially part of Scandinavia. It's Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. But I was always laughing whether it's about the cold and very dark winters. Whether we need to bang our heads to keep ourselves warm. Well, that might be one of the reasons, because that's my excuse why they burned all the churches in Norway. They were cold. As simple as that. But no religious, backstories or anything more anti-religious behind it all. They were just plain cold. But It's tough to say. I think Scandinavians are quite, they take themselves quite seriously. They're kind of solitary wolves. They like their art quite melancholy and quite dark. Why? I don't know, because there are places like Portugal, for example, whose traditional music, fado, is very, very melancholy as well. Some of the traditional music in Italy is very melancholy. It's very heartfelt and very sentimental, emotional. So,
the blues in America, it's the same kind of thing, right?
yeah, and then at the end of the day, who are we, if not the children of, or like the bastard children of African drumming and Wagnerian classical music? You know, at the end of the day, so it's a music has always been a big melting pot anyway. There's no cultural appropriation when it comes to music because it's always been like that. It's the musicians and artists in general should be influenced by everything. You know, we're just trying to, one way or the other, to get the things that are impossible to say in words, you know, get that out musically and try to communicate through all that stuff. And it doesn't matter, the tools don't matter. And, you know, the emotions, I think, are pretty much the same from culture to culture. We all feel sadness and we feel happiness and we feel a sense of longing. And the words might differ a tad, or the genre of music might differ a tad, but we're still human beings, you know.
I am not fortunate enough to have musical ability myself, nor the gift of being able to express myself through song. But I'm fortunate enough that my job allows me to be surrounded by people that are creatively gifted that way. And so I always love asking the question of, especially for an artist like you that has had so many different projects, how do you start the songwriting process and make the decision of, okay, this is a song that I'm going to keep for VV. This is a song I'm going to use with a collaboration with another artist. How does the creative process start for you?
So I call it humming and strumming. Pick up a guitar and start humming. And to go back a tad, you know, I think I think that us musicians, we're kind of consider ourselves a lot of times to be sort of musically challenged in a way that we don't know how to communicate normally. So we've had to learn a way to communicate, which includes music. So that's not necessarily a gift. It can be a burden as well.
When you don't have it, believe me, you want it and you think it's a gift.
Yeah, but it could be a hindrance as well, you know. So at times when it's tough to communicate verbally, at least myself, you know, when I have a tough time to communicate verbally what I mean or what I feel, then it's usually easier for me to pick up the guitar and or a synth or you know, tinkle on the ivories or whatever. But regarding the projects and all, I'm very monogamous when it comes to projects, and I like to work on one single thing at a time. And I've done a fair bit of little collaborations and have been singing on a few artists' albums along the way. But it's always happened by some lucky accident. They've been friends, or we've been on tour somewhere, we met or became friends, and it's always been very organic. Not so that we would have sat down and thought that, you know, in January I'm going to do this and in February I'm going to do that. It's never been as professional, so to speak. It's always been very, you know, I've always been winging it more or less. But when it comes to my own stuff, I'm very I usually like to keep it very close to myself. You know, I'm not a huge proponent of co-writing, for example, which is something that a lot of people do, especially these days. It's, for me, it's incredibly complicated when you have a feeling that you can express through music, but not necessarily lyrically, and to give that away or taint that the purity of that emotion with somebody else's emotion. Now we get into sort of like difficult territory, because maybe the word taint shouldn't be used there. It can be a beautiful amalgamation of two different, you know, souls coming together, however you want to put it. But a lot of times I'm very sort of like like to keep my own ideas close to myself, and they feel very personal. So it's hard for me to just throw them away or give them to anybody else's perusal. What do you think of this idea? I need to finish a song a lot of times and get it ready, and a song isn't finished at the writing stage. It's finished when it's produced and recorded and done with, and usually not even then. But the song never gets finished. It keeps on living each and every night you perform the song as well, because the audience give it a new meaning. They can, they can do that or that to a song very easily. And that's what they do, and that's what they should do. So I'm just, it's a complicated journey on various levels, but yeah, it's also, I think it can be also about have something to do with my age. So if think realistically, dogs' years are like, isn't it? Like one dog year is about 7 human years, and I've always thought that the rock and rollers' years are about 3 or 4 because it's the album cycle. So thinking in terms of album cycles, I don't have too many in me, even if I'm lucky. So I have to be sure that all my songs count and that they are important to me, and I don't do throwaways.
I always ask this question because I can't imagine this process for myself, but especially bringing in, you talk about an outside voice, you bring in a producer, you bring in at some point management, the record label, and then at the end, the audience themselves, for them to be able to do this or this. I can't imagine creating a song that I have filled with my feelings and thoughts and emotions, and then you believe, okay, this is as complete as it can be, and you hand it over, and then they don't like it. Like, I don't know how I would recover from that kind of hell on earth.
Well, that's the reason for the butterflies. So that's a full cycle here.
Okay.
So you can never tell. It's not about, of course you have to believe in yourself when you do the music, and working on music is quite private. It can be quite intimate because it's you and the music. If you're not working with a big team or a big band or a lot of producers hanging about or whatever. So at least on the Noir, the new album, because I worked on the whole stuff by myself and only by myself. So it became really, was my thing, and it was tough to let it go. And but what I've learned along the way is that, as I know myself as a music listener, is that it's about the alignment of the stars, how a song works, and if it comes out at the right time and where people's heads are at. It's like, it's like fashion. It's like flared trousers, bell bottoms. They're the coolest thing on earth that one time every 20 years. You know what I mean? It's like songs and musical styles and all that. It goes round in cycles as well. And you're hoping that you're there to ride the wave. And then there are those people who are ahead of their time, And
purple hair has been cool and uncool like 6 times since I dyed it. And you just do it. And if it's cool, great. And if it's not, so be it.
Yeah, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it is a constant struggle, whether it's hair or music.
And for somebody like you, I think there's a big difference, correct me if I'm wrong, to starting out as a new artist, right? That you're trying to show people who you are. But for someone like you launching a new project, you are going to get compared to the art you've made previously and the projects that you've been part of previously. And you can't kind of avoid that comparison. But how has that experience been releasing Neon Noir now? Is charting this new territory? Has it been what you expected from the fans?
It's been way more. I've been astounded in a very positive way about regarding the reaction, especially on tour, because you can never tell in advance. You can never take stuff for granted, especially in the realm of music, because the cool new hair colors come and go, and so do sounds. So I was very pleasantly surprised, especially that the audiences wasn't only older H.I.M fans, or people in my age bracket or whatever. But there was a lot of young people there who never got the chance to see him and never got the chance to hear those songs. And I'm playing with the new band. I'm playing a ton of H.I.M songs as well. So it's like a 50-50, and I think it's only fair. Plus, I do think that this is a transitional moment between him and where I might go next. I think it's a reminder to myself as well, where I come from as a singer and a songwriter, and as a fella. And then it's like Noir. The album isn't that far from the stuff H.I.M released, and that's partly because I wrote all the H.I.M songs besides Wicked Game, which we covered back in the day quite a few times. The original by Chris Isaak.
Still an amazing song, and it proves what a good song it is, that it can be covered and it's wonderful in its own way.
You're absolutely right. That's a good example of it. It's a classic, timeless. It's a perfect song. And I'm so glad that we covered it back in the day, because it's glad to be a part of that song somehow, and also being able to sort of translate that song maybe to listeners who didn't appreciate the originals, sound or feel or so forth. But it has many more things to do with it as well. Why it's so important to me. It's its connection with David Lynch through Wild at Heart, the movie, and with Nicolas Cage, of course. But also the era of Twin Peaks and all that. I grew up then, and I love my music and my movies to be a bit left of center and a bit kooky and weird and unexpected, and sort of, not unlike Elvis Presley, sort of like, just weird and wonderful.
Well, it's funny that you worded it as the perfect song, because it's a question I ask every songwriter on the show, that it's not about favorite, but as a songwriter, from your perspective, I always ask, can you give me an example of a song you covet that you think is a perfect example of songwriting at its essence, that someone else of any genre of music, would that be your answer, or is there a song that fits that description better?
Yeah, well, I think it does indeed. And especially you could ask a question that, can a song be better than Wicked Game? Or could Wicked Game be a better song? Is there something you could do to it to make it better? And I don't think you can. So it is perfect, because what we're trying to look for as musicians also, we're trying to look for the sort of perfect imperfections, the beauty marks. That's what makes it special. Everything's super generic and everything's just the top, run-of-the-mill, top 40, whatever. That's the McDonald's. That's the stuff we're not going to remember.
This is a hard lesson for girls, though, for a guy to say, no, it's the imperfections that make you special, because most of the time people want to get rid of their imperfections.
We all know that from art. We all know that from Mona Lisa's. We know that that's the stuff that makes us stand out as people. I'm talking about, it can be physical beauty, but it's also, it's the beautiful imperfections of people's mental and spiritual sides as well. And, that's usually the stuff you remember, not the stuff that is, because I don't think there is I think a traditional perfection would be considered bland really easily, because just too good, it's not interesting anymore. And I think that in life you're trying to look for things that are interesting, bit out of the ordinary, and
Is there anything that you do outside of music that, especially during the lockdown, when you're looking for something else, some kind of very strange, or strange because it's so normal, hobby that you discovered to pass the time because touring just wasn't an option anymore? Did you pick up gardening or jigsaw puzzles like a lot of other artists did?
I used to do gardening back in the day. I'm not really good at it, but I like to put my hands in the ground. It's nice to do physical work and all that stuff, but I wouldn't call it a hobby per se. If I have a hobby, it's bathing. That's something I've done since I've been a kid. My mom loved to bathe, take a bath, and I've been bathing since I was a kid. That's where I read all my books. That's where I usually get most of my ideas, and that's very important to me. I guess there's something close to the feeling of being in the womb, the sort of like warmth of it all. I guess
that's why I like a weighted blanket for the same reason when I sleep.
Sure. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. There's the security, and then there's also sense of in a bathtub you're sort of removed from the technical aspect. Sure, you can have your cell phone in your hand or whatever, but you can't really pay your bills and do that stuff. It's that's the sort of, at least to me, that's the quiet time to read a book, and even if the bath would be a 20-minute one, it's still, it's a sort of no man's land. Like airplanes used to be back in the day before Wi-Fi hit.
Right.
So I loved flying, and I remember one of my favorite pastimes back in the day was to fly on my birthday from LAX to Helsinki, because then I'd lose my birthday because of the time difference. So I love it that I go business class and sleep, and then when I wake up, my birthday's over. I don't have to have anybody mentioning it to me or anything like that. I just loved it. And that was the time before you were able to call anybody or do your Wi-Fi internet thingies.
Well, I really hope there's a bathtub waiting for you in Boston.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so nice to get to know you. And
thanks for having me.
You'll be at Big Night Live coming up on Sunday. So thank you so much.
And hope to see you there.
I will be there. Yeah.
Cool. Come on, knocking on the dressing room door and say hi.
I'll warn you before I walk in to make sure you have pants on.
Fair enough. Pants on, pants off, you're welcome. It's all good.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Likewise. Take it easy.
There he is, Ville Valo from VV. The new album, Neon Noir, is available everywhere. And you can see VV out on the road, including a stop in Boston at Big Night Live on April 2nd. If you check the show notes of this episode, there'll be a link for you to get tickets. And you can also check out the music on this episode's custom playlist. I make a playlist for every full-length episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast that features my guest music and all the other songs and artists that we referenced in the interview. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday. Plus, you get the Sit Rep. The Situation Report runs down all of your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in about 5 minutes every weekday. Plus, you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. The Mistress Carrie podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, including now on YouTube. You can get more details on the podcast at mistresscarrie.com. That's also where you'll find my concert calendar, my blog, my photo gallery, and the official online Mistress Carrie store. You'll also find every episode of my video show, Cocktails in the War Room, and you can watch it live every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern on my official Facebook page. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.